Forced clocking in leads to malicious compliance. I started at a company and they didn't have clocking in machines. People would show up quite regularly a couple of minutes late. Not through reckless abandon but simply because traffic in the area was hugely unpredictable. Plus the car park was really far away and it'd take time depending where you parked to get into the office. Everyone was okay with this because they also would happily work considerably more than the 3 minutes. They were late by working while eating lunch or by staying after 5 or a combination. Anyway, the HR guy decided he had something to prove and got a clocking in machine. He would then issue warnings on an escalating procedure from verbal to formal, written to worse. When people started to realize this was the case, they all just started fully working to Rule 8:30 a.m. clock-in. Exact 45 minutes for lunch, always away from desk, and at 5 p.m. You betcha there was a full-on rush to clock out. There'd occasionally be a queue to clock out at 5. By 5:05 p.m. the place was an absolute ghost town apart from the sad act director and HR knobber that implemented this system. They must have felt really smug with themselves that they stopped people being late. They also must have lost an absolute fortune through lost productivity, and a few good people hated it, so they left. What's great is nobody actually sent a memo out like, hey, let's work to Rule. It was just this unconscious thing after the first disciplinaries. Governments should study these people, as it'd be amazing population control if they could bottle it and put it in the water. Interestingly, my last company, Fortune 500, had to implement this for the exact opposite reason. They were sued and lost big time for a company culture of requiring unpaid overtime. So they instituted the clocking in and out to make sure all overtime was recorded. We actually had to write up a couple people for clocking out and still working. Some people are way too dedicated. I worked at a manufacturing facility, and they had a cart that would go from place to place, loaded with coffee and snacks, so that we didn't have to go to the cafeteria. Each area had a set break time, and there were lines painted on the floor, partially to define the area, but also for material handling so people wouldn't park materials or tools in the pathways. We had a dick of a foreman who insisted that nobody crossed the painted line until after the break whistle blew. The problem was that there could be 20 or 30 people lined up, and sometimes you couldn't get anything before the break over whistle went. So, I timed the break whistle perfectly, as in, to the second. 90% of the days I would be walking at full speed, with one foot inside the line, and the other crossing over. As the whistle went, I was usually first in line at the cart, and would get to enjoy my break, rather than waiting in line. The foreman wasn't impressed, but couldn't do a damn thing about it. Same thing happened at my former employer, a Fortune 50 company. They used to have hourly employees just report total hours per day on a simple web form. I'm sure there were some Timothieves, but most of us just got the work done and clocked 8 hours. Unless it was real OT, not just a missed break or short lunch. They ended up implementing time clocks, and now there's no way people are giving a spare second. And my guess is time theft actually went up in the form of elongated 15 minutes breaks that now are 20 or even 30 minutes each. I was managing at a place that had strict rules on clocking in and clocking out for the staff. As a manager, I was salary and wasn't required to clock in, but I heard a lot of griping, and it wasn't something I could really control. So I had an account set up, began using the system myself, and found out how much of a royal pain in the ass it was firsthand. After that, somehow our clock kept getting broken repeatedly. Every new one the HQ sent us lasted maybe a week, tops. Nobody could figure out why. Without the fucking time clocks, My staff were willing and able to go above and beyond. And managerial, profit reviews for our stores were very good. We came in as the top district in the country several times, which we never had before. After I, very fucking quietly, taught some of the other managers I could trust what I was doing. These failures quickly networked and spread across our 137 stores. Yet somehow, productivity measures went up in the stores with such failures. Rarely were more than half the time clocks in the chain working at the same time. And technicians called in could not figure out why they were failing. So in each case an expensive new one had to be ordered and the unit replaced. Finally the company stopped using them. 2 years later. Fuck that shit. Edit. Somebody asked. Take a small stack of punch cards. Just too thick to feed into the clock. Insert just far enough to get the feeder running. But keep holding them so they drag against the rollers. Stop immediately when you see the first smoke rise from the machine. Repeat for several days, each time using a new stack of cards. The insulation inside the feed motor burns out, and the clock won't feed cards. Sometimes, the clock itself burns out. It seems to be an electrical problem caused by improper voltage regulation or some such. So they replace the whole unit, thinking the electronics are fucked. There's no evidence of tampering, since the wear on the rubber feed wheels is even. Note: I make no claim that I ever did this and I have no idea if it would still work as well as it did. For us. Edit 2. Well, that fucking blew up. Didn't expect that. I had a job where I could only work 29 hours a week. I worked 4 days a week for 7.25 hours a day. Came at 9 a.m. Took a 45 minutes lunch. Left at 5 p.m. I would submit a weekly time card. Got a new manager and wanted me to come in 5 days a week and take an hour for my lunch. Ergo that's 5.8 hours a day. Came in at 9 a.m. Hour lunch. Left at 3:48 p.m. My coworker would put down 4 p.m. on his timesheet. Manager was nice and all but had to ask me why I was leaving at 3:48 p.m. Kindly reminded her I could only work 29 hours a week. The first MSP that I worked for hired me at a salary, with the understanding that they might be forced to transition us to hourly in the near future for legal reasons. Turns out I was much more likely to work extra when I was salaried than when I was hourly. I knew the change wasn't for my benefit, and once I was presented with a clear demarcation between my time and your time, it was easy to bail at the end of the day, even if it meant passing up some OT pay, which was always bitched about if you did get any. Nobody actually sent a memo out like, hey, let's work to rule. It was just this unconscious thing. After the first disciplinaries, I've read this story over and over again on this sub. Don't they teach this in manager school? Why does every fresh generation of managers think that introducing clocking in to avoid losing 3 minutes in the morning will still let them keep the 17 minutes people had previously worked longer in the evening to finish the current task? It boggles the mind. I worked at a company where I started out as hourly before being moved to salary. Instead of taking a 30 minutes lunch, unpaid, and 2 15 minutes coffee breaks, everyone just took an hour lunch. So on my time card, I put down 30 minutes for lunch and didn't take 2 15s during the day, combining them for the extra 30 minutes. Well, one day the payroll lady gives me an earful about how I can't do that. So I took my unpaid lunch, and I made damn sure to take 2 random coffee breaks, usually when least convenient for everyone else. They also didn't give me keys to the office for the longest time. So I would show up at 8 a.m. when everyone was supposed to start, and wait in the parking lot until someone else showed up. I was on company property, So they paid me to sit in my car for 15 to 30 minutes depending on the day. My department, which, in fairness, is about 18 people, is very much self-directed. If we arrive a few minutes late, that's fine, because we can get our work done and we're all very much invested in our department. If we had a really rough weekend, that's fine. Take Monday off. Everyone is fine with this. Except our manager, who is more concerned with being on time than actually doing what needs to be done. And it needs to be mentioned our manager works 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. Anyways, we just never tell our manager anything. Oof, I love this. So many places shoot themselves in the foot with clock-in machines. My work tends to bend and let people be 5 minutes late, leave 5 early and pay full hours. When people were late, they didn't mind if they clocked out and someone asked for help on the walk back through the factory to the car park. In comes new supervisor who is training at our factory before moving to a brand new site, and suddenly people are being nabbed for late starts, etc. So the entire factory would shut down in break times instead of the staggered breaks we did to keep it running. No work or mobiles answered on them. Clocked in on the dot and then everything shut down to be clocked out in time. All overtime stopped too. Also, anytime they rang people outside of work, which was extremely common, it just rang out until we were on the clock again. New supervisor ended up not making it past his probation period. Don't give authoritarian any ideas. I'm really fond of the idea of grinding up middle managers and putting them in the water. Treat your workers like shit, and they will do crappy work. It is pretty much the same here. We have a time tracking web tool, where we enter our times, which customer, billable and stuff like that. And it has to be done by Monday every week. This is not much of a problem. But after entering it you have to change every entry to released, and sometimes you might miss one entry. We don't have proof of that, but am pretty sure. The system sometimes messes up an entry or two. Shouldn't be much of a deal. But HR, as they have nothing better to do, then sends out warnings, write-ups on a Monday if the entries are not right. This pisses off so many people, as they always include the managers. Fortunately, my managers too think that this is stupid and don't care. It would be okay if they just sent a friendly reminder, please check your time entries. You might have missed something, but instead some HR drone sends them out this way. This rubs so many people the wrong way and we start to have general hate of HR nowadays. Actions like this send a very clear, simple message from the management to the employees. We do not trust you. This is a huge motivational downer. Only very stupid managers are unaware of this. I work in a kitchen, very similar to the before in this. No time clock. Everyone rocks up with 5 minutes of start time. Nobody spends extra time on bathroom breaks because they understand that things need to be done and done quickly. The late comers always make up their time and nobody gets bothered. I totally get what you are saying, but there are good reasons for a time clock approach. Anytime a company has hourly workers, they open themselves up to scrutiny by the Wage and Hour Board. I hate it, but I actually have to make sure that no one goes out to the production floor unless they are clocked in. I have to ensure that employees take their full lunch break. If the receptionist picks up the phone, she'd better be clocked in. Years ago, a friend went through an audit. Long story short, a woman would come in and make the coffee in the break area maybe 15 minutes before work every day. Very innocent, right? Nope. The company had to pay her back pay and fines for that time. So I am that bitch who reminds people about time clock protocol. My ass is on the line, so sorry. I just have to make sure you are getting paid for every single minute you are working. I have a lot of responsibilities, but this is the one I make sure I get right. People come to work to get paid, and I want to make sure they are paid correctly. Now go take your lunch break, please. My fire department floated the idea of adding a digital punch card, but when they realized they'd actually have to pay us to arrive 30 minutes early for shift change X every member of the department, generating tons of scheduled overtime, they let that idea a quiet death. I worked for a small company where everyone was on salary. It was one of those nice cushy office jobs where everyone pulled their weight and everyone was generally happy. We merged with another firm that had a time clock, and suddenly everyone had to clock in and out. If we were late by more than 2 minutes, we'd get an email from HR. 3 strikes rule. And all overtime had to be pre-approved. With no overtime and zero flexibility with scheduling, about half the staff left within the first year. It went from one of the best places I worked to one of the worst very quickly after the time clock was introduced. The effect on morale was almost immediate. Exactly the same culture at the only place I have had to clock in as a professional. Actually, ours may have been worse. If I clocked in 8 minutes late, I got dinged for 15. So, if I was going to be 8 minutes late, I would be 15 minutes late.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.